Hi there, I'm Lyndon Thorpe. Um, I'm sure you know me. I'm always around on LinkedIn. I'm an embodiment specialist and signal literacy expert. Signal literacy is just a posh word for non-verbal communication, really. And I've been dealing with communication now for the last 40 years, so something of an expert. But now I'm channeling my knowledge and my expertise into the business world, because this is where we need to communicate in a superb way and an authentic way. That's very important today. Be authentic, be present. That's what people are saying. And of course, this is the Burnout Breakthrough. And yeah, burnout is a state in which we are completely disconnected from the body. Recently, someone contacted me, a VA actually contacted me and said, how can I tell if my boss has burnout? So I asked some questions and she told me a little bit more about it. And yes, he was in full burnout. What he was doing was repeating the same request to her all the time, every day, the same request. So clearly just not aware, alert. And indeed, he did, after I'd kind of looked at it, he did then admit that there was a big problem, and I'm starting to work with him now. So it's really, really important. Somebody around you may be burning out. The symptoms are, they are foggy brain. That's the first symptom. And then repetition and unawareness of what has already been done. So it may seem like amnesia, you might receive the same message several times, because the limited mind, as I call it, this mind here we associate with everything neuro, which is also fashionable, is actually limited. It's brilliant, but it's limited. You can't live from it every minute of the day. And that's what people do. So they have looping thoughts, inner dialogue going around. They can't sleep, they can't eat. And eventually, of course, the nervous system protests totally, and they go into a breakdown. We used to call it nervous breakdown, but now we call it burnout, because that was a WHO label that was put onto it. And it's associated always with the workplace. And of course, we can stretch that analogy nowadays to working from home, because many of us now work from home. I've done it now for the last 10 years. I love it. But some people, don't keep enough contact with the outside world. And so they can start to really go down a funnel, into a kind of la-la land, which is no good indeed. Okay, so this week, I don't know if Joseph Nwoye would join us. I've not heard from him. If he doesn't, well, we'll see him sometime. He's very busy, so I'll just get on. I want this week to talk about your bones. Yeah, bones. I wrote an article this weekend about bones because several medical practitioner friends of mine are really writing about how the bones start to change when we get older, and especially for women. Menopausal women often have osteoporosis afterwards because of the hormone depletion and so on. So I wanted to add the missing piece to all this wonderful information about hormone replacement therapy and so on by talking about the fact that the bones actually do speak to us. Yeah. Just to set the scene, 2 weeks ago, I wrote about gravity and talked about gravity a lot. And to me, that's a very important factor of all the body work and embodiment work I do, because we can harness the gravitational force to keep us grounded. And you can do it quite quickly. I've done it before. Forgive me if I'm repeating, but it needs repetition because we forget. So if you're sitting or standing, just drop your arms, let your shoulders relax, and then really just allow the bottom half of your body to be heavy. Let it sink into your chair, or if you're standing, let the weight of your lower body sink through your feet, and feet flat on the floor. And actually, I love it. It's a lovely feeling to just let go. And remarkably, what happens once you really let go is the urge to be upright. Human beings have been upright for 7 million years. But that urge, which is so strong in human beings, really kicks in because you're grounded and you feel safe. Your body is safe. It's held by the earth, actually. And so the urge to be upright becomes really strong. And the breath. You want to breathe from the diaphragm, which is just under your rib cage. And so you can take a big breath and really feel your ribcage filling up and the crown of your head going up into the sky, infinity. And there you have the perfect combination. You have the grounded and the lengthening and the aspirational. So it's no mistake that the word aspire means to reach for something higher, but it also means a form of breathing. So our aspirations should always be connected to our breath. Now, once we've got the gravity factor factored in, then this article that by my colleague, Dr. Subla Arya, who is a menopause specialist, really inspired me to write about bone health. And the silent loss of bone, especially in menopause, but often in perimenopause, before menopause, it is alarming. Yeah. And basically, if we're not grounded, if we're not feeling safe, then the bones really are affected by that. We think of bones maybe as scaffolding. We've got the idea that the skeleton, is the structure for the muscles to hang from, and all the protects all the organs and so on. But it's a little more complicated than that. So just let me check my notes and I'll tell you more about this. So yeah, it starts with gravity, because, what if gravity is not just a physical force, not something we learn about in the physics classroom, but it's actually in the body's daily education. Yeah. Bone, as I mentioned, is often imagined as a very static structure. We think of bones as hard, a scaffolding, something inert. But in fact, bone is living tissue, and it's vascular, cellular, and constantly changing, like everything in our body. The cells are constantly changing, rippling around through the whole body. The bones are the same. After all, we may seem like flesh and blood, but really we are energy. Energy is our source, our human spirit, our energy. And if we really embrace that, we're going to change the way we think about our body. Now, bone responds to loading, okay? So therefore, mechanical forces are very important when we think about bone. And that is called homeostasis. Never mind the terms, they're not so important. Bone cells often respond to pressure, tension, and strain. Now, this is speaking to the stress, the overstress that many of us experience in screen life and in business life in general. And so actually in 2022, there was a review in a bone research periodical which describes the mechanical forces as central to bone homeostasis and mechanosensitive signaling pathways. In other words, the skeleton is not just holding us up, it's receiving information on many things, from how we move, how we stand, walk, lift, balance, brace, and collapse. All of these things are informed by the pathways, the signal pathways, which are all linked up to the brain. So, in other words, as I've said many times before, every single word we say instructs our body. Now, of course, that doesn't make sense if you're thinking in pure meaning terms, but if you're thinking in terms of tone, register, volume, many aspects of non-verbal communication, then we can begin to see that every word we say, whether we say it out loud or whether it's going around in our head, actually tells our body what to do. Yeah. You may find that incredible, but it is true. And I see it every time I work with somebody. The power of language to instruct our bodies is amazing. I've got so many case histories, but I'll share a really dramatic one. A client had very severe pain, contacted me, and we started to work on the pain and giving permission to let go of the pain, which is what I do through a special process of meditational giving permission to your entity to take control. Many of us outsource everything, and so we lose control. We're not in control very often of our bodies, and certainly not of our minds. So this person, we gave permission, that went very well, and then we started to talk about the words that were coming to her mind, and the words she was saying to her friends when they asked how she was and how her pain was and her back was. Of course, she shared those with me, and of course, they were very negative. And so every time she told somebody about her condition, it was negative. And so that instructed her body to continue to hold on to that negative instruction. Yeah. And she would say things like, oh, I'll always have this pain, and my body will never be the same again. Very negative, dramatic statements. And of course, her friends and family were very alarmed by this. She'd been to many doctors. She'd even been to psychiatrists. Nothing seemed to work. So when we reframed her language to positive, and we rehearsed and we reactivated each word, and it was interesting because one word, my, this is a word we use often when we're talking about ourselves, was completely hollow to me, and I could hear that. So we reactivated it, my, and she let the vibrations really sink into her chest. She touched her heart. She made it her own word. And of course, her voice changed totally. Instead of this hollow voice, hollow pain-ridden voice, suddenly her voice came to life. It had new vibrational range. It was an inspiring kind of sound to her, and of course to me as an observer and a guide. And then after we'd reactivated the things, she would now go ahead and tell herself and her friends about her pain. We went on to go a bit more deeply into the origin. You see, the human body holds on to trauma. you've probably heard psychiatrists and so on tell you this. When we see it often in movies and read about it in novels, when we experience a trauma, the body remembers it. It holds on to it. The limited mind may forget it and in time and seem to be acting normally. That's a clue to how the limited mind is very separate, really, from the body. So the body holds on to the trauma, and it can cause lots of problems, behavioral problems, other health problems, and indeed be a stumbling block to finding true happiness in life. So when we started to work on the origin of this, I put my finger on something which caused a very large emotional response from the client. And in fact, she took me back 35 years to the birth of her first child. And this birth was not good. It was traumatic for the baby and it was traumatic for the mother, and both took a long time to recover. As a result, both had quite chronic health conditions, especially the daughter, the child. So when we looked back at that trauma and talked about it, she revealed that she had always blamed herself terribly for this birth, that she should have done better. And it was her first birth. She was young, in her early 20s. She'd got the advice of other women who had given birth. She had medical advice. She did all the right things, but it didn't go well. So she blamed herself from that day onward, but never, ever shared that with anybody except me 35 years later. So this is what happens when the body holds on to a trauma and the limited mind works independently of the body, which it does. It's a set of tools. It's not really to be lived by. We can think about body health. We can conjure up words about body health, but it's not how we live. It's always at a distance, you know. The body holds on to the trauma, and the only way we can get rid of that trauma is by giving the body permission, using our language, the script that we use, the type of language that is powerful for us. And if we give permission to the body to let go of that trauma, it will. And it did with her. And she was so emotional for a while. But then a couple of days later wrote to me and said, Lyndon, I can't remember, I can't believe this. This pain is totally gone. No hint of it. And I've monitored her for the last 3 or 4 months, no pain. So doesn't this tell us a lot? The words we use affect us terribly. And so we have to be really careful about what we say and what we think in word form. So going back to the bones, yes, speaking to your bones, it sounds a little strange, but really it's true. It works. Weight-bearing bones in space, if we think about astronauts and so on, we have a very strong impression of people floating around inside spaceships. It looks rather fun, doesn't it? But in fact, we call it microgravity because the weight-bearing bones no longer receive the same demand. They're not carrying weight. The spine, the hips, the pelvis, and the legs don't have to support the body in the same way as when we are in the gravitational force. Okay, so in microgravity, we don't use the body in the same way at all. So NASA, the American Space Agency, reports that astronauts can lose around 1 to 15%, 1 to 1.5% of bone density per month. 1 to 1.5% of bone density per month during 4 to 6 month missions. And this is particularly in the weight-bearing bones. So yes, we've seen portrayals of this when astronauts come back to Earth. They can hardly walk. They are dizzy, they are unsteady, they have to be helped to walk because they're back in the gravitational force. They're back in that pressure. And of course their bodies are weakened by being in microgravity. And it takes a while to recover from a space mission of 4 to 6 months. So it's astonishing, really. In ordinary aging, bone loss can happen quietly over the years. But when the body is deprived of ordinary gravitational loading, as it's called, then this can accelerate very, very quickly. This doesn't mean that gravity alone builds strong bones, not at all. It means that the body needs gravity plus active loading. So movement, muscle pull, resistance, impact, balance, and variation. And yes, if you ever have had your bones tested, then resistance is a big thing. So the doctor will put his hand to yours and ask you to push, and with the feet as well. This shows how good your resistance is. If it's weak, it could be a bone problem. And so, when we're back in the gravitational force and the astronauts come back and walk on the Earth with the usual gravitational force holding them on the Earth instead of floating around in space, then the body has to readapt to those new demands, and it can take time to recover. So how does this apply to burnout? Well, it does really apply because screen life, modern working styles, and so on, most of us are not up in space, but many modern lives are forms of partial unloading. We're not moving, we're not lifting, we're not really managing gravity. Unless, of course, we exercise, which I hope you do. And I will talk a little bit later about the type of exercises that improve gravity. But the best one really is the weight, what should we call it? The weight release. Let's call it weight release. Sitting in your chair, standing on your feet, spreading across the earth, letting go of the lower part of your body, not so you fall if you're standing, but just enough to feel lovely heaviness. I love it. And in fact, now I was researching this, and I find that gravity blankets are now very popular. What is a gravity blanket? Well, I use the same principle. I like to have a heavy cover when I'm sleeping. Some people like a very light cover, but I like to have weight. And I also enjoy weight in my clothing. So I like to wear heavy beads. I haven't got them on today, but I've got some very heavy coral beads. I love that. That weight really helps me to feel grounded. And it may help you too. While you're speaking in public or while you're talking to clients, it might be really good to think about gravity before you start. Let go of the weight of your body, stay back in your spine, lengthen your spine, let the crown of your head go up into infinity, let your arms be loose, and then really just from time to time check that you are feeling heavy in your lower body. Keep your feet flat on the floor. And this will really make you stable And this will affect everything, all aspects of your communication. Your voice quality, the tone will be much more stable and calm. You breathe differently from your diaphragm, not from the upper chest or throat. It has a huge effect. So, yes, during the week ahead, think about the space analogy. You may as well be in a spaceship. So please get out of your spaceship at least 3 or 4 times a day. Stand in the gravitational force, stand outside in the air if you can, and really just take a couple of moments to reset how gravity is working for you. In time, if you do this regularly, and it's not an exercise, it's not going to tire you, you're not going to feel exhausted after it. You will feel energized after it, and there's nothing to do. It's non-doing. A lot of the things we can do to avoid burnout are non-doing. Yeah. And this is not just my wisdom, although I have harnessed it and I have applied it in many ways in my work, in my lodestone work and so on. But it does come originally from F.M. Alexander, my guru. I must thank him. He's long gone. He was a Victorian actor, born in Tasmania, and he discovered how we can use gravity. He was an actor, a professional actor. And in those days, actors would stand very braced in a military style, their shoulders back, their knees locked, their chin up, so that they could deliver their speeches without microphones. Yeah, they needed a lot of force. But in time, that posture will damage your voice. And in fact, it did. He lost his voice, so he lost his livelihood. Went to all the doctors he could find, all the specialists he could possibly contact. No results, no reason for this voice loss. So he set up a series of mirrors in his home. He spent the next year watching himself in these mirrors, watching every part of his body, so that he could find the answer. And the answer was his posture. By lowering the chin, by lengthening the back of the neck, by standing or sitting with a lengthened spine, and by letting go of the body to gravity, the Alexander technique was born. And I've been practicing that now for 40 years. Yeah, I'm a teacher, and I bring all that work now into my embodiment work online. I also work face-to-face here in Japan. I'm in Japan. So if you come to Japan and you want to have some embodiment work, please contact me. So yes, in burnout, this mind is overstimulated, utterly overstimulated. Your nervous system is under great pressure, but the body may be underloaded, undermoved, underbreathed, and undergrounded. under. I use this phrasing because it will stay with you. So if you're underloaded, in other words, if you're not lifting anything in your life, your bones will deteriorate. Yeah. So weight-bearing exercises are recommended by medics for osteoporosis. So lots of older people go to a swimming pool and pull their bodies through water. Now, this is really putting resistance on the skeleton, and the bones start to reform and recover. So, yeah, think of all those unders: underloaded, undermoved, underbreathed, and undergrounded. So please, during your day ahead, if you do work from home or you are sedentary in your work, please get up from time to time. I often stand for long periods when I'm working, and it really helps me to keep my body aligned. And remember, with my work, with Lodestone, I will bring you down into the unlimited mind where everything and anything is possible. So if you'd like to know more about Lodestone, please do contact me. I'm very much up for a chat to tell you more. This is very new quantum work. You may be a bit reticent about plunging into it. So yeah, I'm very much up for a chat. I'm also here every Monday, every single Monday. I'm here at this time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And I repost this live session for BST and European time zones later in the day. So you should be able to come across me wherever you are. So basically then, the upshot of this short talk is that when we lose our felt relationships with the ground, the feet, the spine, the breath, and the pelvis, we also lose some of the body's natural organizing intelligence. The body is incredibly intelligent. Most of us go to the gym and think that's it. But my work is so different because it's non-doing. It's not about repetitive movements. That can be also damaging if you do too much of it. It's really important not to over-exercise, and I'm afraid that many people are doing that, which will contribute to burnout as well. So don't just go to the gym. And if you do go to the gym, be very careful about how much you do. It won't solve all your problems. People think, young people especially, think going to the gym will keep them fit, will keep them beautiful, blah-de-blah, but it won't necessarily. You need that extra dimension, the missing piece, which is the non-doing work on your body and the reconnecting of your mind, this mind, to your body. I call it putting the lights on at home. Your body is your home. Your body is also an earthling. And so the earth is very important. And yes, in fact, without gravity, without the earth providing gravity for us, we would float off into space and never be seen again. Yeah. This is salutary. Please take these sentiments to heart and really think about another way to help you to avoid burnout. Bone health, of course, is medical too. Don't think that the non-doing aspect will replace the medical. You do need medical guidance if you have problems with your bones, because the bones, their growth, their maintenance and so on involve many things. Hormones, estrogen is important for women. Bone health during the menopause can be very tricky. Nutrition affects your bones. You need calcium, you need vitamin D, protein, and of course, more than 65% of conditions that cause our death as humans are connected to inflammation. And my work deals with inflammation. So there are so many aspects to this. But remember, above all, your bones are mechanical. They have to move. The skeleton is designed to move the body. That's its true purpose. And if we don't move, then there is bone loss. And we can see that with astronauts. Yeah. So what can I say? The most useful thing to say is that exercise is not the answer. It's useful if in moderation, like all things, but it's not the full answer. You need a multi-component to protect your bones. You need weight-bearing activity, you need resistance training that I mentioned earlier, pushing against things and so on. You need good balance. Standing on one leg while you're working is something I do quite often. It's very beneficial. You need good posture. That means a lengthened spine. And you need to work with me. Come and work with me, and I'll show you exactly how to solve these problems and avoid burnout totally. So do contact me if you'd like to know more. But yes, if you do have osteoporosis or any bone condition, don't think that this should replace your medical treatment. Keep in touch with your doctor. And of course, share this with your doctor, because the Alexander technique is by many doctors very much respected and acknowledged. So FM Alexander is the basis of a lot of what I do. Also, if you've got a history of fractures, or bone pain, yes, do consult a doctor, but also consider other ways to look after yourself. Thanks so much for joining me today. Sorry Dr. Joseph couldn't join us. He'll be here some point, and I wish you a really wonderful day ahead in gravity. Step into the gravitational force as often as you can, and your life will be long, happy, and healthy. Thank you so much. Bye for now.